All right, let's take a trip. We're heading upriver into a story that's going to peel back that thin layer we call civilization and show us what's lurking underneath. This is our deep dive into Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. Let's get into it.
So our story kicks off on a boat with this absolute bombshell of a line. But here's the kicker. Our narrator, Marlowe, isn't talking about some faraway jungle. Nope, he's on the River Thames, staring right at London, the heart of the British Empire, and he's calling it one of the dark places of the earth.
And boom, right there, that single line sets up the entire novel. Welcome to Section 1, A Tale of Two Rivers. Conrad isn't wasting any time. He's basically erasing the line between the civilized world and the so-called savage one. He's telling us loud and clear, the darkness isn't just out there, it was once right here, and you know what? It could be again.
To really drive this home, Marlowe asks his buddies on the boat to just imagine it. What was it like when the Romans first came here to Britain, 19 centuries ago? For them, this was the unknown. And you can see the parallels so clearly. For a Roman soldier, Britain was this savage, hostile place of fog and disease and death. Well, for Marlowe, that place is now the Congo. The details might be different, but that feeling, that gut-wrenching feeling of facing a huge, terrifying wilderness, that's exactly the same.
You know, Marlowe doesn't pull any punches about what conquest really is. It's taking land from people who have a different skin color or a flatter nose. It is an ugly, ugly business. But, he says, there's maybe one single thing that can make it seem okay. A noble idea. The belief that you're not just taking over, you're bringing light, you're bringing progress. The rest of the story is basically putting that one really fragile idea to the ultimate test.
So part 2, the snake charms. How in the world does a guy like Marlowe end up in a place like this? Well, it doesn't start with greed or violence. It starts with an old map and what feels like an appointment with destiny.
When Marlowe was a kid, he was totally obsessed with the blank spots on maps, the places no one had explored yet. Now he's a grown man, and one river in particular has him hooked. On the map, it looks like a giant uncoiled snake, and it just calls to him. He says it fascinated him as a snake would a bird. He just had to go. The snake had him under its spell.
So he gets the gig. He reports to the company headquarters in this city that he calls a whited sepulcher. You know, looks all pretty and clean on the outside, but it's full of death and decay inside. And the welcome he gets is just creepy. First, there are these two women just sitting there knitting black wool. And he gets this vibe that they're like the fates from Greek mythology, guarding the door to darkness itself. Then a doctor measures his head, not to see if he's healthy, but for science.
Marlowe just can't shake this feeling that these knitting women know something he doesn't. He literally thinks of the old Roman gladiators' salute to the emperor. We who are about to die salute you. It is such a chilling bit of foreshadowing. He gets the distinct sense that a lot of guys walk through that door, and not many walk back out.
And just before he leaves, the doctor hits him with this. The question just hangs there in the room. 'Cause, see, the doctor isn't worried about malaria or dysentery. He's curious about the mental changes that happen to men out there. He already knows the real danger isn't the jungle. It's what the jungle does to your head.
Okay, so those warnings back in Europe, they were just words. Now we're on the coast of Africa, and Marlowe is about to see the real thing. This is Section 3, the fantastic invasion. This is where that noble idea of progress slams headfirst into a brutal, completely nonsensical reality. So here's that idea we were talking about, in its purest form. This is what Marlowe's aunt, who helped him get the job, thinks is happening. She sees her nephew as an emissary of light, a hero on a glorious mission. This is the noble excuse, the beautiful idea that's supposed to make everything okay. But the very first thing Marlowe actually sees in Africa is this. A massive warship just sitting there in the empty ocean, firing its huge guns into the jungle. At what? At nothing. There's no enemy, no town, no target, just the boom of cannons against a wall of trees. Marlowe feels there's a touch of insanity in the proceedings, and yep, that is his real welcome to the project.
And when he finally gets on land at the outer station, man, the insanity gets so much worse. It's like a scene from hell. Everything is chaos and waste, piles of machinery just rusting away. They're blasting a cliff, for no reason. He sees a chain gang of so-called criminals in iron collars, and then he stumbles into this grove, a place where the exhausted workers are just left to crawl away and die. This isn't progress. This is the inferno. But then, in the middle of all this filth and decay, Marlowe sees what he calls a miracle, the chief accountant. This guy is dressed immaculately. Starched collar, crisp white cuffs, perfect hair. He is a vision of pure order in a world that has completely fallen apart. For Marlowe, just keeping up that appearance in this place, that's a real achievement of character. It's this bizarre little act of defiance against the chaos.
And it's this man, the accountant, in his perfect white suit, who first says the name that will become an obsession, the name that is the whole reason for this journey. For the very first time, Marlowe hears about a man named Kurtz.
And that name, of course, brings us to Section 4. We're getting to the man who is the magnetic center of this whole dark world. But right now, Kurtz isn't even a man. He's a myth, a legend. He's just a voice in the dark. See, everyone talks about Kurtz. The accountant says he's a first-class agent. The station manager calls him very remarkable. Another guy practically gushes, calling him a prodigy, an emissary of pity and science and progress. He's supposedly part of this new gang, the Gang of Virtue. So before Marlowe gets anywhere near him, Kurtz is already built up into this legendary, almost saintly figure.
But Marlowe's no fool. He quickly figures out that this so-called Gang of Virtue has another god, and it isn't progress, and it isn't science. It's ivory. The word is everywhere. It's whispered, it's sighed. He says you would think they were praying to it. And the high priest of this new religion, the man who brings in more ivory than all the other agents combined, is Mr. Kurtz.
And that brings us to the last section of our explainer, the journey into the heart. After months of waiting, Marlowe's steamboat is finally fixed. He is finally on his way, up that snake-like river to the inner station. A 2-month trip into the heart of darkness to finally meet this man, Kurtz.
Now, this trip, it's not just a trip. Conrad makes you feel like you're traveling backwards in time to the earliest beginnings of the world. The silence is deafening. The air is thick and heavy. And the quiet isn't peaceful. Oh no, it feels like an implacable force brooding over an inscrutable intention. It's like the jungle itself is watching them. Marlowe feels like they're wanderers on a prehistoric Earth, totally cut off from everything they've ever known.
The tension just keeps building and building until, just a few miles from Kurtz's station, they get completely swallowed by a thick white fog. You can't see your hand in front of your face. And then, out of that blinding white nothingness comes this cry, a scream of what he calls infinite desolation. They are totally blind, totally helpless, and surrounded by this awful unseen sorrow.
When the fog finally lifts a little bit, all hell breaks loose. The forest, which seemed so empty, suddenly erupts. Little sticks, no wait, they're arrows, start zipping past them. Marlowe gets a quick glance at the shore, and it's just a blur of faces and arms and legs. The bush is literally swarming with human limbs. It's this chaotic, terrifying assault, and he can't even really see who's attacking them.
In the middle of the attack, Marlowe's helmsman is killed by a spear. And in that moment of chaos and grief, Marlowe has this one bizarre thought. Kurtz must be dead too. And he is crushed, utterly disgusted. He realizes he never cared about seeing Kurtz or shaking his hand. He just wanted to hear him. For Marlowe, Kurtz was never really a person. He was a voice. And now, he's sure that voice is gone forever.
But of course, he's wrong. The story isn't over. The physical journey might be, but the real journey, the one into the human soul, that's just getting started. Marlowe has made it through the jungle. Now he has to face the man at the center of it all, which leaves us with the biggest question of the whole book. After all this buildup, all this myth-making, what actually happens when you finally meet the voice in the heart of darkness?